The Soviet army is at the gates. The city is surrounded. Hitler is in his bunker. And boys as young as 12 are being given rifles and told to stop the largest army on earth. Berlin fell after 2 weeks of apocalyptic urban combat. This is the fall of Berlin. April-May 1945. Berlin, Germany. A battle is about to begin that will change the course of the war. On one side, Soviet Union, commanded by Marshal Zhukov. Against them, Nazi Germany, led by General Weidling. Both sides know what is at stake. To understand this battle, we need context. 2.5 million Soviet soldiers converged on Berlin for the final battle. The Nazi regime fought to the last, sending old men and children to die in the ruins of the capital. Soviet Union had assembled a powerful force. 2.5 million troops, 6,250 tanks, 7,500 aircraft. Nazi Germany was equally prepared. 1 million troops, Volkssturm militia, Hitler Youth. The stakes could not be higher. A defeat here would be catastrophic for either side. Marshal Zhukov studied the situation carefully. Every decision now could mean victory or disaster. General Weidling was confident. The plan was set. There was no turning back. The men on both sides knew that many of them would not survive what was coming. By April 1945, the Soviet army had fought 1,800 kilometers from Stalingrad to the Oder River, just 60 kilometers from Berlin. Zhukov and Konev launched the Berlin offensive on April 16, 2.5 million men, the largest concentration of force in history. At the Seelow Heights, the Germans fought fanatically. Soviet searchlights blinded the defenders but also silhouetted the attackers. It took 3 days to break through the Seelow Heights. 30,000 Soviet soldiers died there. But the road to Berlin was open. The Volkssturm, old men and boys, were thrown into the defense. Many had only a Panzerfaust and a few days of training. Soviet tanks entered the outskirts of Berlin on April 21. The fighting in the streets was apocalyptic. Every street was barricaded. Every building was a fortress. Panzerfaust teams lurked in basements and upper floors. The Soviets learned to fight in cities differently. Tanks, infantry, and artillery worked in combined assault groups. On April 29, Soviet soldiers reached the Reichstag. The fighting inside was room to room, floor to floor. On April 30, Hitler committed suicide in his bunker. His 1,000-year Reich had lasted 12 years. On May 2, the Soviet flag was raised over the Reichstag. The iconic photograph symbolized the end of the war in Europe. The battle cost the Soviets 81,000 killed. German military and civilian casualties were over 100,000. Soviet soldiers found the horrors of the Nazi regime firsthand: concentration camp survivors, slave laborers, and the evidence of genocide. Germany surrendered unconditionally on May 8, 1945. The war in Europe was over. Berlin fell after 2 weeks of apocalyptic urban combat. Hitler committed suicide on April 30. Germany surrendered on May 8, ending the war in Europe. The cost was enormous. Soviet Union lost 81,000 Soviet killed, 280,000 total casualties. Nazi Germany suffered even more. 100,000 plus killed, 480,000 captured. When the news reached the capitals, the world understood that the war had changed. For the soldiers who survived, this battle would haunt them for the rest of their lives. The commanders on both sides would be judged by history for their decisions here. Military historians would later analyze every move, every decision, every mistake. But for those who were there, no analysis could capture what they went through. The fall of Berlin ended WW2 in Europe and the Nazi regime. It marked the beginning of the Cold War division of Germany and Europe. The lessons of this battle would influence military strategy for generations to come. Today, memorials stand where the fighting took place. A reminder of what happened here. Books, documentaries, and films have told this story. But nothing compares to the reality. This was the fall of Berlin. Berlin fell after 2 weeks of apocalyptic urban combat. And the world was never the same. The events described here shaped the world we live in today. The events described here shaped the world we live in today. The events described here shaped the world we live in today. The events described here shaped the world we live in today. The events described here shaped the world we live in today. The events described here shaped the world we live in today. The events described here shaped the world we live in today. The events described here shaped the world we live in today. The events described here shaped the world we live in today. The events described here shaped the world we live in today. The events described here shaped the world we live in today.